Claudia, local elections this week.
There are local elections this week, Alice, and it's a mammoth set of votes, actually. We've got, just so you know the numbers, 10 metro mayors being elected, over 2,600 councillors across, I think it's 107 local authorities in England. We've got the London Assembly elections this week, elections for the police and crime commissioners, and not to be forgotten, because it's not been touched upon that much in the coverage yet, the Westminster by-election in Blackpool South. Obviously, I know that you've got lots of experience in local governments and as a local councillor previously, so it'd be really good to get a sense from you about what you think is important in these elections and why they matter, really.
That's a great question, Claudia. So a lot of, understandable reasons, the discourse will focus around what this means for Westminster and the general election coming up, what it means for Labour and the Conservatives. But actually in local government, there's so many services and initiatives that really matter to communities and to business that will come under the metro mayors or the police and crime commissioners, the councillors and so on. So particularly if there's more devolution with Labour, if Labour win the next election, then we can expect even more of this to become relevant to those combined authority mayors and those really important investment decisions being made at more of a local level.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting as well to look at the different outcomes around the country. What do you think this means for some of the smaller parties? Are they going to get squeezed out by all the discourse around Labour and the Conservatives?
It's a good question, and obviously you know that I follow Lib Dem politics quite closely. I think for the Lib Dems, it's going to be an interesting set of elections. At the previous local elections last year, they increased their seat share by about 3%. I think they'll be looking to replicate that kind of progress this year, and we'll be feeling confident. The Lib Dems tend to do really well in local settings, be that local elections or Westminster by-elections, where they can really lean into kind of the intricacies of the local political system rather than the national political system. So they'll be feeling confident, and will be really focusing on targeting those councils that mirror up with the seats that they want to be targeting at the general election. So one to watch out for is Dorset's council, where they're looking to overturn, I think it's just a majority of 2 there, a Conservative majority, which will really put them kind of on a good footing to fight, for example, the West Dorset's constituency in the general election, which is going to be a good one for the Lib Dems to fight there. While we're talking about smaller parties, worth mentioning the Greens, who are going hard in Bristol to overturn the Labour minority there. Again, paving the way for what's setting up to be quite an interesting fight in Bristol Central for the general election, where they're looking to unseat Bang and Debonair, the Labour incumbent there. We haven't mentioned, but we probably should mention, Reform. Interestingly, they're not standing that many candidates in the local elections, somewhere in the region of 300 candidates, which when you think about the scale of elections is pretty slim. But where I think we could see the impact of Reform is in the Blackpool by-election, where it's kind of highly likely that they'll split the vote on the right, kind of paving the way for Labour to come up through the middle.
Really interesting to keep an eye on, isn't it? Also really interesting to think about what's happening in some of those bellwether constituencies.
Absolutely.
That Labour will be looking to gain seats in the general election. I know I said it's not just about Westminster politics, but those kind of things are interesting too. So we're looking at like places like Dudley. Also Stevenage is fascinating because we had that Labour Together demographic profile of what they called Stevenage woman, like a mother in her 40s with children who's like struggling with the cost of living crisis, and how those kind of voters will vote in those commuter towns will like determine the outcome of the next election as well. So away from party politics, something I'm going to be looking out for in the metro mayor elections is also, in the past, a lot of these roles have been traditionally held by men. So I'm going to be really interested to see how people like Kim McGuinness and Claire Ward do, see if we can get more people joining Tracy Brabin as metro mayors who are female. And like diversity in politics, really does a lot in terms of decision making and so on. So it'd be good to see how the women perform too, and looking forward to hopefully some more women being elected, for any party. So really interesting, lots of stuff happening with the local elections. And something that we always get asked about is, when will the general election be? And like, is there anything we can learn from the local elections that might indicate when that election might be? I know I've been making some potentially unwise bets about a summer election that's looking less likely. What do you think, Claudia?
I think it's a really good question, and obviously it's an important one for us to kind of really get our heads around. Personally, I think it is all going to hinge on those two really important mayoral votes in the West Midlands and Tees Valley, so Andy Street and Ben Houchen respectively. It's not beyond the realms of possibility that the Tories actually hold those two seats, and I think it's fair to say that Labour are kind of preparing the ground for that to be the outcome. If that is the case, it's positive for Rishi Sunak, obviously, goes without saying. I don't think it will totally revolutionise kind of the political scene that we find ourselves in. It's not going to kind of give him a boost in the polls, in the national polls. But I think it might be sufficient to stave off that groundswell of kind of revolutionary feeling on the right of the party that kind of came up over this weekend. So I think it might be sufficient to stave that off and mean that we're less likely to see a snap election in the summer, and therefore more likely to see a November election, which obviously isn't great for your bets, but I think that's probably where we're going to land up.
Yeah, I'm thinking probably October, November election and me losing my bets. But we will see, and we'll find out very soon. Claudia, what can people look out for in terms of Cicero analysis?
Yes, we have got immediate coverage coming on Friday as the results start to come in. But it's worth saying the results, unlike a general election, trickle in over the course of a few days. So our full analysis will be coming on Tuesday after the bank holiday.
Excellent. Look forward to reading it.
Great.